ringsidereport.net for the latest on MMA and UFC and more. It is Dave Simon. What's up, Dave?
Indeed. Vitor Belfort, big knockout last night. One of the most impressive knockouts in UFC history. A spinning head kick that knocked out Luke Rockhold. Yeah, if you didn't see it, Matthew, showing you a little image in studio.
Oh,
boom!
wow.
Spinning head kick putting Luke Rockhold down. Vitor, the legendary former UFC champion, swarmed on him with a few punches, ground and pound, and ended it in his home country of Brazil in the first round of the main event of UFC on FX8 last night.
That must have been an unbelievable ovation and reaction after seeing that. What do they call those? Those they're not videos. I can't remember the name they use.
It's a GIF.
GIF? Yeah, it's a GIF or GIF. Yeah. Yeah. Love that. It's like a 4-frame blow-by-blow, over and over kind of image. I love it.
And you can just watch it over and over again.
It's violent. It's definitely violent.
Awesome knockout for Vitor to put a stop to a long win streak from Luke Rockhold. He was a former Strikeforce middleweight champion coming into the UFC, I think 8 or 9 wins in a row, and Vitor put a stop to it. The guy's 36 years old, and last night looking better than ever. This guy is superhuman.
What does this do now for him and what their plans are for him? Does that throw a wrench and say, oh, no, he looked so good, we got to do something with him?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting what they're going to do with Vitor. He fought John Jones last September for the light heavyweight title on short notice, and at a valiant effort, almost submitted Jones in the first round, but wound up getting submitted in the fourth and losing that fight. Comes back in January in Brazil, knocks out Michael Bisping. Bisping was looked at as the next guy to fight Anderson Silva had he defeated Vitor. Vitor stopped all that. Rockhold comes in as a tough opponent and looking like, well, if he could beat Vitor Belfort, maybe he'd be in line for a title shot, but Vitor takes him out. So a lot of people wondering, well, will Vitor get another shot at Anderson Silva? But they fought a few years ago, and Anderson delivered one of the most devastating knockouts in UFC history with that front face kick that knocked Vitor out. So I don't know how many people want to see Anderson fight Vitor. There are a lot of fights for Anderson Silva right now. He's going to fight Chris Weidman in July, and then if he beats Weidman, there's a lot of talk of, super fights with George St. Pierre or John Jones. So Vitor's kind of in a tough spot where it doesn't look like he's going to get a middleweight title shot because the champion is busy and the champion has already beat him. So I think just other top-level middleweights are in store for Vitor Belfort.
Is there anything for him to do in terms of class, going up, going down?
I mean, he could go up to 205 if he wanted to. He challenged John Jones, as I said, for that 205-pound title. He could go up. I don't know if he wants to. I don't know what's really in it for him going up. I think he could have some big fights at 185. I still want to see him fight Wanderlei Silva. They were supposed to fight each other about a year ago, coaching opposite each other on the Ultimate Fighter Brazil. That fight never materialized, and I think it would still be an interesting one. Wanderlei's coming off a win over Brian Stan. He's been fighting at 205, but said he'd entertain a fight at 185 if it was an interesting one. So I'd like to see Vitor fight Wanderlei. There's talk that Vitor might fight Jacare, as Ronaldo Jacare Souza picking up a victory in his UFC debut last night. An amazing head-arm triangle choke that put Chris Camozzi to sleep. So there are some interesting fights out there for Vitor. It's just going to be, the decision of the UFC on where they want to put him.
All right, chatting with Dave Simon, talking some MMA here on TSN 690. Elsewhere on that card last night, Dave, anything else of note that we should be talking about?
Yeah, I mean, the Jacare Souza one was very impressive. This is a former Strikeforce middleweight champion, a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, a world champion at Jiu-Jitsu. This guy is one of the greatest grapplers on the planet, and he made short work of Chris Camozzi. Camozzi not a top-level opponent. Jacare was actually supposed to fight Costa Philippou instead. Philippou got hurt, so Camozzi stepped up. Jacare just putting on a jiu-jitsu clinic, though, very quick. Gets a takedown, passes, and finishes with a beautiful head-arm triangle choke. Just amazing, and Camozzi didn't even have time to tap before he passed out. So that was a very impressive fight there. And, a lot of Brazilians fighting on this card, a lot of guys that are up and coming. And pretty much every Brazilian won on this card except for Hakran Diaz losing a close, tough fight to Nick Lentz in a decision.
Game points here on TSN 690. Elsewhere, Dave, what is the next pay-per-view?
UFC 160 coming up in 6 days' time. Cain Velasquez defending the UFC Heavyweight Championship of the world against Antonio Bigfoot Silva. And the co-main event is official. There were a lot of problems in the past couple of weeks. Mark Hunt supposed to fight Junior Dos Santos on Saturday night. A lot of people looking at that as the most interesting fight. Two big strikers with good power and amazing chins. I mean, this is going to be a classic fight. Mark Hunt is from New Zealand, and he was arrested back in 2002. The case got thrown out. He'd fought in the United States since, but was having trouble for some reason getting a visa to enter the United States, and there was a lot of concern that this fight wouldn't actually go ahead as planned. So much concern that Roy Nelson, a heavyweight in the UFC who just picked up a win at UFC 159, quick knockout of Czech Congo, he got a license for the state of Nevada for this fight just in case Mark Hunt wasn't able to show up and Big Roy was going to get the call to fight JDS. But Mark Hunt just getting the news today that he did get his visa. He should be in the United States later tonight or early tomorrow, and he will be fighting on Saturday night against Junior Dos Santos in what should be a classic.
But the problem with that, I would think, would be the incredible distraction surrounding that whole situation for Hunt. I mean, you got to be training. You don't even know if you're going or not. You got to block it out of your mind. That's got to play a factor.
Yeah, you would think, and I don't think mentally is going to play a factor with Mark Hunt, because you just got to understand this dude. He is just a tough Samoan, no nonsense, doesn't give a damn, just, whatever. I'm ready to fight. I'll fight whenever, whoever. I think physically it might play a role because, the travel from New Zealand over to Las Vegas is not easy.
On essentially short notice for 6 days.
Yeah,
or so.
You got to get used to
days, whatever it was.
Get used to the time. There's jet lag that comes into it. It's going to be a tough adjustment, I think, for Mark Hunt. This is a guy who wanted to come in a couple weeks ago, and that's when the problems started. So he really wanted to get, accustomed to everything and get his body ready for the fight, and now getting a lot less time than he was planning on. So we'll see how that affects the fight. I think if the fight goes into the, second or third round, the longer the fight goes, the more it'll be in the favor of Junior Dos Santos.
And for Dos Santos, what does a win mean here?
A heavyweight title shot. It's a shot, again, at Cain Velasquez. JDS won the heavyweight championship in November 2011 by knocking out Cain Velasquez. He then fought him again last year in 2012, losing the heavyweight championship in a 5-round war where he got beat up pretty badly. Now, just one fight. Since then, if he can get a victory over Mark Hunt, he's right back in there for a title shot, for a trilogy fight with Cain Velasquez.
Who has to win as well, though.
Unless Antonio Silva shocks the world and becomes the heavyweight champion. No one's really expecting Antonio Silva to beat Cain Velasquez.
Why?
Because they fought once before, and it was a beatdown. It was just disgusting. Antonio Silva was bleeding profusely. He was just... he took one of the worst beatings in the history of the UFC in that fight. It was disgusting. Cain Velasquez had his way with him, and really, Bigfoot wasn't in that fight at any moment. It looked easy for Cain Velasquez. But Bigfoot knocked out Alistair Overeem, knocked out Travis Brown. He's on a little win streak, and he surprises people. He is a guy that comes in as a huge underdog and wins. He was a huge underdog when he fought Fyodor Emelianenko in Strikeforce. He beat Fedor. No one expected him to do so. He came in against Alistair Overeem in his last fight. No one expected him to win. He was a big underdog. He winds up knocking out Overeem in the third round. Bigfoot is a very talented dude when he's an underdog, so you can never count him out, but most people expecting Cain Velasquez to run right through him because Cain Velasquez is the baddest man on the planet. He is scary good. A gas tank for days, power, incredible wrestling. He just never quits.
He is Dave Simon, Wednesdays and Friday nights, 11 p.m. for his MMA program called Ringside Report. You can also check out Ringside Report RingsideReport.net on the web, and, of course, Dave Simon MMA on Twitter.com. What do you have coming up Wednesday, Dave?
We're going to recap the rest of the UFC on FX 8 card. We're going to start getting you ready for UFC 160. A lot of stuff. Kevin will be in studio with me on Wednesday. And then Friday we'll have Fred in studio. So Big week, big fight week in MMA. Heavyweight title on the line. I mean, it's a big deal.